All right, let's get into the scriptures today. If you want to follow this message in your Bibles, you can turn to Ephesians chapter 4. You'll find message notes and discussion questions on the website and the app. You just click on Connect with God and then Messages, and it will bring up today's message notes and discussion questions. In the verses we're about to read, Paul mentions 5 spiritual gifts that are often limited to church settings. They are the gifts of the apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastors, and teachers. But today I want to expand these gifts to each Christian, to every one of us, as we function in our families, in our communities, in the world around us, as well as the workplace. Now, I don't want to, in teaching this, I'm not detracting from the fact that there are some people called specifically into these ministries in a church basis. And I don't want to take away from that. But I also realize that the many times I've heard this taught over the years, I have never heard a message like this that applies these spiritual gifts to all of God's people. And that's what I want to do today. I became a Christian in the late 70s. It was kind of on the tail end of the charismatic movement. The charismatic movement, a renewal of the Holy Spirit, broke out amongst traditional and evangelical churches around 1960, and it continued that decade. It morphed into the Jesus People movement, where a whole bunch of long-haired hippie people, myself included, and yes, you need to use your imagination about the long hair. I understand that, but a whole bunch of us came to faith in Jesus, like thousands and thousands of people who had tried the whole alternative, free love, new age, drugs and alcohol, all of that kind of stuff, and found it to be completely empty. And we came in to the church. And the charismatic movement was wonderful in that it renewed the gifts of the Holy Spirit to the church. The downside of it was that invariably the gifts were seen as something that would operate only in a church service. And so we would get to church and, someone would have a message in tongues and then somebody else would interpret, or sometimes we just cut out the middleman and just prophesy and all the other gifts of the Spirit. The fascinating thing about God back in those days, by the way, was that he spoke King James English. Only, yea, verily, I saith unto thee, thus saith the Lord, and so on and so forth. It's good that I find that he just kind of talks in everyday language these days, which I don't know whether that shows us the growth of God or the growth or maturity of God's people. The challenge with charismatic teaching, though, as I said before, was that the gifts of the Spirit was something that operated only on a Sunday morning or a Sunday night. And that's not a picture we see when we go to the scriptures, particularly the Gospels and the book of Acts, where the spiritual gifts of God's people, including Jesus, operated in the marketplace. They're in everyday life. And many of you will be operating the gifts of the Spirit in everyday life, and you won't even be realizing what you're doing. And because they're supernatural, not super spiritual. And so I want to broaden these gifts out for us today in this message that I've titled Divine Design, because each of us have a design from our Maker that fits with who we are and what we do. And so let's investigate this wonderful topic today. Let's read the scriptures, and we're going to pick it up at Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 1. As a prisoner for the Lord then, says Paul, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. I love that statement. That's a really good definition of church right there. Bearing with one another in love. It means to put up with. Because there's going to be challenges, right? A bunch of imperfect people all together in one place. So put up with others in love. But then don't say that to them. It's like, I love you and that's why I'm putting up with you. No, just do it. Verse 3, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There's one body and one Spirit, just as you were called, to one hope when you were called, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. There's a sermon just in that statement. Verse 7, but to each one of us grace has been given as Christ apportioned it. This is why it says, and he quotes here from Psalm 68, when he ascended on high, he took many captives and gave gifts to his people. This is talking about the ascension of Jesus Christ here, that when he rose from the dead and 40 days later, he ascended into heaven, and it says, and then he poured out gifts. It's like fireworks. The firework goes up and boom, and you see all of this beautiful fire coming down, right? And that's what it was like here. Jesus ascended. He didn't explode, which is good news, like a firework. But then you can see all of these gifts showering onto the people of God. Each and every one of us are gifted by him. Now go down to verse 11 of chapter 4. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers to equip his people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to a whole measure of the fullness of Christ. And so Paul in the next few verses writes about how these 5 gifts aim to train God's people to minister or to serve and then mature within the church community. Now, if you want to have some teaching on those 5 gifts and how they interact in a church setting, you'll find those on the Bayside Church website. And I was listening to one of these during the week. In 2005, almost 20 years ago, I did a little 2-part series called Who's Your Minister? And the audio podcasts are on the Bayside Church website. So you go to Connect with God, and then there's a menu for you. You select teaching series, and you will find all the teaching series from the last couple of decades all there for you in alphabetical order. Some great teaching by myself and various other people from over the years, and it's all there on the website for you. And so Who's Your Minister is a 2-part series that unpacks Ephesians chapter 4. And as I say, I had to listen to one of the messages during the week. It's funny listening to your own sermon from 2 decades ago. I'm like, okay, yeah, I agreed with myself. It was good. I wasn't half bad, which is great. So if you want to have a listen to those, feel free. But today, as I say, I want to expand these gifts to every one of us as we operate in daily life. Out of these 5 gifts, the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, the teachers, which one or ones do we relate to the most individually? What are the strengths and the weaknesses of these gifts, and how can this knowledge help us to be more effective in our workplace and our interactions with others? And so they're the questions I want to answer over the next few minutes. Let's start, though, with a definition of each of these gifts. Apostles, first of all. The word apostle, apostello, or apostolos in Greek, it means to be sent. And an apostle is a messenger or a representative or an ambassador. There is a sense that each and every Christian is an apostle in the fact that we are ambassadors for Christ. Paul talks about that in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. He says, we collectively, as a community, we are ambassadors for Christ. A fascinating concept. An ambassador is somebody who represents their home country on foreign soil. And so right now in Canberra, we have ambassadors from various nations representing their nations on Australian soil. Where they are in that embassy is considered home country for them, but they're still on foreign soil. The scriptures tell us that we are citizens of heaven. Our citizenship, when you accept Jesus and you follow him, it's like you're given a new passport. We are citizens of heaven. But here we are as foreigners, as pilgrims on this planet. We're literally living on foreign soil. because we're citizens of heaven. But what are we doing? Well, we're representing heaven on earth. In fact, one of the key things that we are to do as followers of Jesus is actually bring heaven to earth. That's what one of the parts of the Lord's Prayer that Jesus prayed, that your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So everywhere we go, we should try and create something of heaven there. I wonder how we're going with that. And so an apostle is a person who's been commissioned by another person to represent them. In Hebrews chapter 3 and verse 1, Jesus is referred to as our apostle and our high priest. The Father commissioned the Son to be born into planet Earth to represent heaven and to represent the Father to the human race. If you want to know what God is like, look at Jesus. If you want to know what God is like, read the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. That's what God is like. Not what people thought he was like, but what he's really like in the person of the Son. And so that's apostles. Prophets, in the biblical sense, a prophet is an interpreter or a forthteller of God's will, a person gifted at expounding divine truth. That's what I'm doing now. What I'm doing with you right now is a prophetic thing, not just teaching, but also it's prophetic. So I'm expounding divine truth with you today. So you're enjoying right now a prophetic and a teaching gift, kind of in a mashup, if you like. A prophetic gift can refer to an inspired speaker. It can also refer to a poet. We have at least one member of our church who is involved in poetry. I'm sure there will be others as well. So I wanted to say to you today, that's an extension of the prophetic gift in what you're doing there. More broadly speaking, a prophet is a person who can advance or emphasize one idea over another, primarily through the spoken word. And so if you are gifted as a prophet, you can communicate vision in a particular situation. You offer wisdom to solve problems and help people navigate their challenges. And so I think about that, for example, in the workplace. If you find in the workplace that you are able to communicate and excite other people about vision, if you find within yourself there's wisdom there that helps in the workplace to solve problems, what a wonderful gift. There are those you get staff members who come and tell you all about the problems, and then there's those who tell you about the problems and offer solutions. That's the prophetic gift right there. And if you're sitting there thinking, yeah, that's what I do in the workplace, well, then you are relating to the prophetic gift. You help solve problems and you help other people navigate their challenges in life. What a wonderful gift that is in a family. It's terrible when there's fracturing that happens in a family, and how wonderful it is if there's a family member or a close friend who can come and sit with the family and help them navigate through that conflict. That is the manifestation of the gift of the prophet. Then there's the evangelists. An evangelist is the bringer of good news. And interestingly, it's the least mentioned gift in the scripture, but what a wonderful gift it is. Who here loves it when someone comes along and shares good news with you? I mean, they're the kind of the anti-evangelists, aren't they, who only ever have a bad story. You see them coming and you go, uh-oh, so I want to get out of here. But the evangelist says, hey, guess what? And they want to excite you with something. They are always good to be around because they've always got good news to share. Then there's the pastors, which is only translated, by the way, the Greek word is only translated once in the New Testament as pastor. The rest of the time, that same word is translated as shepherd. Someone with a pastoral gift will feed, protect, lead, and care for the total well-being of people. Invariably, those who can't do those things for themselves. I think of people, even in our own community here, those who work in aged care, for example. Amazing work, challenging work, but so necessary, getting along those who for whatever reason, have got to the age where they can't do everything for themselves anymore. And how wonderful to have those pastoral gifts around them at those times. Those in the opposite end of the spectrum, in kindergarten and preschools, where you're caring for little kids. I always thought, I just had such great respect when I had our little girls, our 3 daughters, when they were just starting early learning and they were 3 or 4 years of age, and I'd take them to the early learning center and drop them off. And there's a teacher or two who has 25 preschoolers for an entire day. And I know, but the teacher's like, yes. Why? Because that's what they're gifted to do. Huge respect from me right there, because one was great, but having 25 of them for 6 hours, no thank you. Nurses, doctors, I could keep going with the list of people who operate a pastoral gift. And then there's teachers, instructors acknowledged for mastery in their field of learning. They are tailor-made to teach and thus attract people who want to hear and learn. Now, in your message notes, I've put an Explore Further section right down the bottom, just before the discussion questions. And part of the Explore Further are the 2 sermons I mentioned before, Who's Your Minister? And there's also a survey that you can do. Now, I did the survey during the week. It's pretty quick. It'll take you about 5 or 6 minutes to do it. I think from memory is about 40 questions. It's very much aimed at church ministry, but it will at least give you an idea. There's a number of surveys online. So I've just looked at a few and picked the one that I thought was the best and also the easiest for you to do. So I encourage you, don't do it now. Okay, I can already see some people on their phones, and don't do it now. Do it during the week, because what I want you to do is actually to listen to the message and then start to work out what you think you might be. Which gift or gifts are your number 2? So no surprises, my number 1 gift came out as teacher, and my number 2 gift came out as pastor. So pastor, teacher together. I recognize some of the other gifts operating in my life from time to time, but they're the main 2. And so as you listen to this, what resonates with you? And then during the week, do the survey, and are you right about yourself? And what insight does that show you? To better understand these gifts, I like the analogy of the hand. So, for example, apostles are the thumb. The thumb allows us to grasp things. Apostles are pioneers, they're builders, gifted in establishing and sustaining. And then there's the prophets. The prophets are the index finger that points the way. The prophet gives direction and correction. So it points the direction and it can also point out things, either in our lives or in the circumstances that might need to be changed. And then there's the middle finger. And I am aware that at this point I actually need to turn my hand around, because we don't want to be flashing the bird at the congregation this morning. I was interested in that, by the way, and I went online. I did some research as well, Andrew, which means I Googled. I don't know, did you Google? Yeah, that's Googling and research are synonyms, aren't they? So I Googled to work out where the bird actually came from. Where did people learn to flip each other off? And it actually comes from 400 BC from Greece. Do we have any Greek members of our church today? Yeah, a couple of people. And so, yeah, thank you. That's where the bird came from, ladies and gentlemen. So anyway, the middle finger is the finger that extends further than any other finger. And so that's the evangelist that extends the furthest. If you're an evangelist, you thrive using your gifts to increase and expand. And then there's the ring finger, which is pastors. And when I was practicing this during the week, I realized that I could not raise my ring finger without my pinky. And then it got me wondering, really deep question here. Is there anyone in our congregation that you can raise your ring finger without your pinky? One? Lauren? Oh, two. We have some talented people here. You can actually do you want to come out and show us? No? So it's fascinating. So whenever I try and raise my ring finger, my pinky just goes, I'm coming too. But we do have a couple of very unique people here who can do that. So you can practice that during the week if you like, and a bit of downtime at work. Do your pinky first, and then, no, because they both go down together. It's like, really? Wow, we have some super, super talented people. Not only can Beth sing, that's awesome. So the ring finger represents commitment. All right, children, come on. The ring finger represents commitment, okay? The shepherd is the faithful, committed caregiver who consistently guides others to places of nourishment, growth, safety, and rest. And then there's the teacher. The teacher is the little finger, which I can lift up without the ring finger, but not the other way around. The pinky. The pinky is a little finger. It looks so insignificant, and yet if you lost your pinky, you would lose at least a third of your hand strength. In fact, the pinky has more muscles connecting it to the palm than any of the other fingers. Now, if you are medically trained, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what Dr. Google told me. And I found if you say something with enough authority, everyone just goes, right, yeah. Which I don't do, I hasten to add, right? So it looks insignificant, but if you don't have that, you lose so much of your hand strength. And so teachers, educators, counselors, mentors, etc., do a lot of unseen work. But like the little finger, their job is critical to the success of those they teach. And I've got great respect for teachers, as I said before, not just preschool, but right the way through. I grew up in a family that devalued the teaching gift. In fact, I remember conversations with my dear mum and dad as we were growing up, and it would often come up in conversation about if you wanted to get an easy ride in life, you would become a teacher. And I believed that, because you believe, up to a certain age, you believe everything that your parents tell you, and then you realize there's a whole lot of stuff that might not be correct. But they devalued it. And you say, yeah, I remember my dad saying, yep, they start work at 9 and they finish at 3, and every 10 weeks they have holidays. And I thought, oh, wow, I was never drawn to becoming a teacher personally, but that's what I grew up with. But then particularly in my pastoral years, I have met many, many teachers, and I have seen firsthand how wrong my mum and dad were in that assessment. They work hard. We have a lot of teachers part of our church here, and I know you work hard because a lot of your work is completely unseen. It could be very easily like a little pinky. And you think, oh, it's just small and insignificant, and yet there's all this work that goes on before you get to work, and all this work that continues after you leave work, and there's work you do during the holidays, and so on and so forth, and there's all this extracurricular stuff. It's very similar to what I do. So I get up here on a Sunday morning and I teach you for half an hour, but this is like the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole lot. I've been meditating on this sermon for months. And then it took me the best part of 3 days this week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, to put this down and to study it and to fine-tune it and to work out what I was going to put in, what I was going to leave out. It doesn't just happen. I don't get up on a Sunday morning and go, oh, there's a sermon. A little bit like Mr. Bean discovering the birthday card he just posted to himself. Oh, it's not. Yeah, look at the sermon and go, oh, that's not bad. I think I'll preach that this morning. There's a whole lot of work that goes into the teaching gift. And Paul emphasizes this truth in 1 Timothy 5. He says, the elders who direct the church's affairs well are worthy of double honor, especially those whose work is preaching and teaching. Whose work is preaching and teaching. Back in the 90s, we, as a church, we met at Mentone Girls Secondary College for about 6 years before we bought this building and started renovating it. And the principal of the school there, Leslie, she really liked me. She didn't like pastors or priests or ministers in general, but she liked me. And the reason was that I had a proper job, that I wasn't just a pastor, because I was working for 3MP as a radio announcer throughout the 90s as I pioneered Bayside Church. And so she's like, no, I like Rob. Rob works as well as being a pastor. Go figure. And there are some people like that. Trust me, this is work. So with all this in mind, let's explore each of these gifts in greater detail. And as we do, I encourage you to think of the gift or the gifts that you relate to the most. What can you learn about yourself and others and how you interact with your family, your friends, your church, and your workplace? So all of these are in your message notes, but we are going to put them on the screen bullet point by bullet point. We've got the apostle first. So if you are an apostle, you love to start new ventures and teams and help others achieve something. You can see what needs to be done and how it can be accomplished. You enjoy getting things moving and getting people committed to a mission. You help people explore ideas and goals, identify their strengths and weaknesses, and reach their potential. And you particularly like spreading into new areas. So they're the qualities of an apostle. You like spreading, you like pioneering into new areas. If you have your own business, you might expand into other locations, or you might expand that business into other products. But you're always looking for ways that you can do things better, differently, and more effectively, and you're spreading into those new areas. We have a number of people in our congregation here, me included, who have come from other countries. That's an apostolic thing. I value my parents, not their attitude toward teachers, but the courage that they showed. When they were in their early 40s, they packed up their little family, me, my older sister, and my younger brother. They said goodbye to all of their family in London, and we hopped on a plane. We were 10-pound poms, and 24 hours later, we landed in Perth. That was gutsy. And there's a lot of people in our congregation here. You've moved from other countries, and there might be lots of different reasons why you moved. It might be because, like my parents, you wanted to give your children a more solid future. And I've got to tell you, I look back at that, and I am so grateful to my mum and dad for moving us from the UK to live in Australia. I love Australia. I feel Australian. I've been back to Britain a few times, and every time I go, and it's a beautiful country, some lovely scenery and all of that sort of thing, but the weather sucks. So that's why I live in Melbourne. Now, hang on a second. But I value their courage. And my sister and brother and I are enjoying the benefits of their courage from the early 70s to this very day. And some of you, I know we got a lot of people that have come across from South Africa and other nations because you want to give your family a better future and maybe move away from some of the challenges in your home country and come to Australia, the land flowing with milk and honey. And I wanted you to see that that is an apostolic gift at work. The prophet. You're a prophet if you're passionate about provoking and challenging assumptions. You love to shake up the status quo. You're focused on authenticity and truthfulness. You look for opportunities to encourage others. You're zealous about social justice and cannot stand by as injustice occurs. You want to do more to change the world. You get dreams and can see pictures in your mind. You are intuitive and discerning about the inner voice. This is so important about the prophet. You get gut feelings on the inside. And over the process of time, you've learned to listen to those more and more. You will have had experiences where you've had the gut feeling and not listened to it and then regretted it later. And you've said to yourself, I need to listen to that intuition, that little voice on the inside. The voice of God maybe, also the voice of conscience. But that sensitivity on the inside that tells me, that warns me, that encourages me. And I make a commitment to listen to that so that I don't live with regret. You're also very good at picking up whether something is a waste of time or not. That's all part of that intuition on the inside. So that's the prophet. You're an evangelist if you love inviting or recruiting others for the job at hand. And you know, I've got to say, in a church setting, if you are leading a particular area of ministry in the church, exercise an evangelistic gift. Because, we get up here and mention, like Sandra did today, various areas for opportunity. But wouldn't it be good if everyone that had a ministry within the church actually got to know other people and recruited them to their role? So you love inviting or recruiting others for the job at hand. You're outward focused. You enjoy sharing stories. You can get others excited about what excites you. You're passionate about life. In fact, you're passionate about everything. You're comfortable anywhere and make others feel relaxed. You want lots of friends who aren't Christians yet. You're not shy about meeting new people. Life's short. Anything could happen and probably will. And I think about my dear wife, who she's a prophetic evangelist. And when we first got married, I realized that there was going to be a pattern every day. And number one was that Christy would never be home on time, that she was always on her way. And it took me a while to realize that could mean 2 hours. No, I'm on my way. And then 2 hours later, I thought you were on your way. I was, but I've left Geelong. And I didn't know that. And also that she would start almost every conversation as soon as she got home with this phrase, "You'll never guess what happened today." No, that's true. And it's delightful. And she's right. I never could guess what happened today. But I'd spend the next little while listening to what happened today, because that's the world of the evangelist, where there's always something kind of exciting and different taking place. It's wonderful. And there's some of you listening to this today and you can go, yeah, that's me. That's you. Christy is always meeting people that she's never met before. One of my earliest recollections, I think we just got married and she needed to go to the bank. I was driving, and so we were in Mentone. And I pulled onto the side of the road and I said, I'll wait in the car. You go and do what you need to do at the bank. And so she did. I sat there. And then after, I don't know, must have been 15, 20 minutes, maybe longer, I looked across and there was Christy walking down the footpath toward the car. And she was chatting with someone very animatedly. Both of them were. And I thought, I have no idea who that is. And then she got back to the car and she got in the car and I said to her, you've never met that person before, have you? And she goes, nope. And then she told me the story about, and that is what life is like with Christy. There's never a dull moment. And it's wonderful most of the time. Like any married couple, we have our moments. Could you talk to me instead of that person? No, I'm just kidding. So that's the evangelist. You're a pastor if you love to meet the needs of the community. You're a peacemaker who creates harmony. You strive to keep a group healthy and focused. You love to have fun and enjoy life. You're an exceptional listener. And praise God for that gift, because most people want to talk at you. But there's very few people who are good listeners. You are good at bringing people together to feel like they belong and are accepted. You help the needy, broken, and oppressed. You feel people's pain when they're hurting. You love to celebrate other people's accomplishments. Isn't that wonderful? And you include those people who are on the edge of the group. And again, like in a church setting, how important that is. Those of you in our congregation and you're recognizing that you have a pastoral gift, use that gift. Come early. And because the only people who are early are visitors. It's true. Everyone else, you come kind of on time or maybe not. And I'm not going to include that as part of the sermon today. I am grateful that you've arrived. Well done. And I know for some people, especially if you have little children, it is a really tough gig trying to get here on time. So, hey, no criticism, no judgment. But if you have a pastoral gift, you might want to say, okay, I'm going to commit to coming to church 15 minutes earlier and going and chatting with visitors. Conversely, after the service, you're the one that's going to be looking around because there's always going to be someone standing on their own looking awkward. And you're the one that's going to go over to them and introduce yourself and find out their name and see if they want to have a coffee. Have you got a visitor's pack? Do we have your details? Is there something I can do to serve you? Is there some way we can support you as a church? Would you like to be involved in a Connect group? Let me take you to the Get Connected stand. There might be all of those things and you're looking out for other people. But if you have a pastoral gift, you will do that wherever you are. You could be at a party, you could be at work. There's someone that nobody else particularly likes or talks to, but you're going to be the one that gets alongside them because you're always looking at how you can gather people if you have a pastoral gift. And then you're a teacher if you enjoy communicating complex ideas in ways that everyone can understand and apply. You focus on clarifying the truth, ending confusion, and correcting misinformation. You get excited when you have people's attention. Yes! You don't understand something and you spend time trying to figure it out. Yep. You're good with words and love to talk. You love to share what you've learned through study and experience. You're an avid reader because reading is one of the best learning methods, and you're curious and enjoy learning new things. As I say, all of those are in your message notes, and so you can have a read through those, do the survey, read them again, and make them part of who you are. I'm going to finish up with just a very brief section here on navigating weaknesses, because what we got to realize is that every strength, if it is not sanctified, can be our weakness. In fact, our greatest strength can also be our greatest weakness in life. And that is a profound and very important truth. So let's navigate these weaknesses. First of all, apostles, constant pioneering and expansion can cause burnout in the apostles and those around them. People can be spread too thinly. The apostle can become frustrated when things don't progress quickly enough. Their insights into other people can cause them to be opinionated and intolerant. Prophets' weaknesses, like the apostle, people can grow weary around the apostle if there is a constant challenge to the status quo and endless social justice issues. They must learn when to give things a rest. The prophet must also learn to control their desire to correct others they deem wrong. They should be careful not to be blunt with their opinions and perspectives of truth. Prophets can be easily distracted. Squirrel. Evangelists. What the evangelist is involved with can snowball quickly, so a plan needs to be developed to manage growth. The evangelist doesn't mind breaking the rules. They might even enjoy it. One of their favorite sayings is, it's better to apologize than to ask for permission. That is not always a good way to operate, just saying. The evangelist can invariably be bold and speak their mind, but needs the wisdom to learn what to say, how to say it, and when to remain silent. Pastors, they may be reluctant to engage in issues outside their comfort zone or invite new people to the group, which may disturb the group chemistry. They want to keep everything just like it is, and they don't want any disruption. That can be a weakness. And then teachers, they need to ensure they don't focus so much on the study that they don't love people well and meet each other's needs. If you're a teacher, be aware of riding your hobby horse that others may find boring. And that's something I've had to work on over the years. There's been different times where I've got my kind of favorite subject and find myself interacting and speaking about that topic way too much. And so hopefully, over the process of time, I have grown and matured in that area and realized when it's time to give something a rest and move on and talk about something else. So as I say, in your message notes, you've got an explore further section and discussion questions. I would encourage those of you who run connect groups, we don't stipulate what connect groups are to teach. Some of you I know use the weekend message and the message notes and discussion questions. You don't have to, but there's freedom there. But I would really encourage all of our connect groups to spend at least one session on this and have some really good discussion together on this topic. And I hope you've been encouraged and inspired by what I have shared with you today.